I had kissed my husband thousands of times during 26 years of marriage, but one kiss from the woman next door was the one that kept me awake until sunrise. 6 weeks earlier I did not know her name. I was 52, divorced for 3 years, and very good at telling people I was fine. The uncomfortable part was that I almost believed it. My daughter Emily lived in Seattle. My ex-husband had remarried. I worked from home as a senior copy editor, which meant most days could pass without anyone seeing me below the shoulders. I had built a quiet life in my Portland townhouse. Coffee at 6:30, work at 7, groceries on Thursdays, a book before bed. Nothing surprised me and nothing required much courage. I called that peace. Looking back, I think it was simply a life with all the sharp edges carefully removed. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning in October, a moving truck blocked half our narrow street. I noticed because someone leaned on the horn while I was editing an article about retirement planning. Through my office window, I saw movers carrying furniture into the townhouse next door. There were plants. An unreasonable number of plants. Tall ones, tiny ones, something that looked suspiciously like a tree. By noon, I had returned to work and forgotten about it. At 4, my doorbell rang. A cardboard box sat on my porch. The label belonged next door. I considered leaving it there. Instead, I carried it 20 feet across the shared walkway and knocked. The woman who opened the door was holding a roll of packing tape between her teeth. She looked somewhere in her mid-40s, with dark blonde hair twisted into a loose knot and green eyes that seemed amused before either of us had spoken. She pulled the tape free. "Please tell me you are here to explain why I own 47 boxes and cannot find my coffee maker." I held up the package. "I am afraid I am only here to complicate your inventory." She laughed. It was warm and unguarded. "That is mine. Lavender. Unless you have secretly decided to start gardening. I have killed basil 3 consecutive summers. Then definitely give me the lavender." I handed her the box. Our fingers brushed for barely a second. Nothing happened. "That is what I would have told you then." She smiled and shifted the box against her hip. "Lauren Hayes. New neighbor, obvious plant problem. Natalie Brooks. Old neighbor, documented plant problem. Good. We already have something in common. Failure. Self-awareness." I laughed before I could stop myself. Rain tapped softly against the porch roof. Behind Lauren, her new home was chaos. Open boxes, rolled rugs, lamps without shades, leaves reaching from every corner. Mine 20 feet away was perfectly arranged. Suddenly, hers looked more alive. "Thanks for bringing this over, Natalie." The way she said my name made me look at her for half a beat longer than necessary. "Welcome to the neighborhood." I walked home, closed my door, and returned to the silence I had spent 3 years perfecting. I put my hand on the doorknob and stood there. Then I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I was smiling. I had no idea why. And for the first time in a long time I wanted to. For the next few days, Lauren became a collection of small sounds through the wall. Music around 7 in the morning. The scrape of something heavy across hardwood. Her laugh during phone calls on the back patio. None of it was loud enough to bother me. That was the problem. I noticed when it stopped. On Friday, I worked until nearly 6 before realizing I had not heard her all day. I told myself this observation meant nothing. Then her car turned into the driveway, and some ridiculous part of me relaxed. Saturday morning, I found her wrestling our recycling bins back from the curb while rain misted across the street. "You know they have wheels," I called. She looked up. "I reject technology one do not understand." "That explains the coffee maker." "Found it. We are rebuilding trust." I walked over before remembering I had nowhere to be. Lauren handed me my bin. "Coffee?" she asked. 10 minutes later, we were sitting beneath the narrow awning between our front steps, each holding a steaming mug while Portland disappeared behind gray rain. Lauren had made mine black. I stared at it. "How did you know?" "You mentioned it Tuesday." "I did. Right after admitting to serial basil murder." I smiled. "You remember a lot." "Occupational hazard. Landscape designer. If I forget what people tell me they want, somebody ends up with a maple tree where they expected roses." She told me about designing small urban gardens, about clients who wanted yards that looked effortless but required spreadsheets worth of planning. That made me laugh because spreadsheets were one of the few things I trusted completely. What about you? She asked. I edit words. Books. Mostly corporate publications, nonprofit reports, long articles written by people who believe commas are optional. So you spend your life fixing other people's mistakes. That sounds more judgmental when you say it. Lauren smiled over her cup. Maybe I am wondering who fixes yours. The question landed more softly than it should have. I looked toward the wet street. I try not to make any. That sounds exhausting. I should have been irritated. Instead, I laughed. Over the following week, our accidental meetings multiplied. A package of mine landed on her porch. She borrowed my screwdriver because hers had vanished into what she called the moving box dimension. I helped her carry a small bookshelf 10 feet from her car to the door. On Wednesday, she left a tiny pot of rosemary on my porch with a note that said it was harder to kill than basil. I put it beside my kitchen window. Every morning after that, I checked it before making coffee. I told myself I was protecting my reputation. Then Lauren spent 2 days away at a job site. No music came through the wall. No footsteps crossed the shared walkway. Her curtains stayed dark after sunset. My townhouse felt exactly as it had before she moved in. Quiet. Orderly. Safe. I discovered I did not like it nearly as much as I remembered. When she returned Thursday evening, I was bringing in the mail. Hey neighbor, she called. I turned too quickly. Lauren noticed. Of course she did. Her smile appeared slowly. You notice more about me than you pretend to. My fingers tightened around the envelopes. I could have made a joke. Instead, I stood beneath the porch light, looking at her across 20 feet of wet pavement, with absolutely no idea what answer would have been safe. I found the safe answer before I found the honest one. You are difficult not to notice. Lauren lifted one eyebrow. I am choosing to take that as a compliment. That seems optimistic. I am an optimist. We are exhausting. She smiled, and the tension loosened just enough for me to breathe again. After that, our small encounters stopped feeling accidental. Saturday coffee became something we simply did. Lauren showed me how to keep the rosemary alive, which mostly involved convincing me to stop watering it every time I felt anxious. I helped her rewrite a proposal for a rooftop garden project downtown. She sat at my kitchen counter while I worked through her paragraphs, occasionally protesting when I deleted one of her favorite adjectives. You removed beautiful. You used beautiful 4 times. The garden will be very beautiful. Then prove it without saying it. She stared at me for a second. You know, that probably applies to people too. I looked back at my laptop before she could see how deeply that landed. Somewhere between coffee and commas, Lauren became part of my routine. I started buying the cinnamon cookies she liked. She started leaving my recycling bin beside my garage when she brought hers in. Once before Saturday coffee, I changed my sweater twice. I stood in front of my closet afterward, annoyed with myself. She was my neighbor. My friend. A woman I enjoyed talking to. There was nothing complicated about that. Then I caught a cold in early November and canceled coffee. Around noon, someone knocked. Lauren stood outside holding a paper bag from a nearby deli. Chicken soup, she said. You did not have to do that. I know. Those 4 words stayed with me longer than they should have. She did not come inside. She handed me the soup, told me to rest, and left. I watched her cross the walkway from behind my curtain, and felt something warm that had nothing to do with fever. A week later, we were drinking coffee on her porch when conversation drifted toward relationships. I mentioned my divorce without details. Lauren was quiet for a moment. I lived with someone for almost 9 years, she said. Her name was Rebecca. Something in her voice made me look over. 9 years is a long time. Long enough to build a life. Long enough to learn that loving someone and being able to stay together are not always the same thing. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of her mug. She lives in Denver now. She is doing well. I understood before Lauren said anything else. Rebecca had been her partner. A woman. I waited for surprise. Discomfort. Some internal alarm telling me that the shape of our friendship had suddenly changed. Nothing came. Instead, I wondered what Lauren had looked like when she was in love. The thought arrived so naturally that it frightened me more than discomfort would have. Lauren studied my face. Does that make you uncomfortable? Rain whispered against the leaves beside the porch. I could have softened the truth. I could have changed the subject. Instead, I met her eyes. No, Lauren held my gaze for one quiet second, then smiled. I smiled back. And what unsettled me most was not that I had answered honestly. It was how relieved I felt that the answer was true. The first real storm of November arrived on a Thursday evening, bringing hard rain, sharp wind, and temperatures that dropped into the low 40s. I was finishing dinner when every light in my townhouse went dark. My refrigerator stopped humming. The furnace went silent. For a few seconds I stood in my kitchen listening to rain strike the windows. Then my phone lit up with a message from Lauren. "You okay over there?" I typed back that I was fine. Less than a minute later, someone knocked. I opened the door to find Lauren holding a flashlight. "My gas fireplace still works," she said. "Come over before your house turns into an expensive refrigerator." "I have blankets." "Of course you have blankets. What does that mean?" "It means you probably have them folded by color." I almost smiled. "I will survive." Lauren studied me, then nodded. "Offer stands." 20 minutes later, wrapped in 2 perfectly folded blankets, I admitted that independence had limits. I crossed the 20 feet between our doors carrying my laptop, phone charger, and enough embarrassment for a much longer journey. Lauren opened the door before I knocked twice. Not one word. I was going to say welcome. Your face was going to say something else. My face has poor boundaries. Her living room glowed in the amber light of the fireplace and 3 candles. Rain streaked the windows. She handed me coffee, and we sat on opposite ends of the couch beneath separate blankets. At first we talked about harmless things. Work, Portland weather, my inability to keep herbs alive. Then the conversation slowed. Lauren asked why I had stayed married for 26 years. I stared into my cup, because leaving felt like failure. And staying. For a long time that felt like success. The fire shifted softly. Then one morning I realized we had become 2 people managing the same house. We were polite, efficient, almost never angry. I swallowed. That was somehow worse. Lauren did not interrupt. When he finally said he wanted a divorce, I was devastated. But what embarrassed me was that part of me was relieved. Why would that embarrass you? Because I had spent years defending a life I did not even know if I wanted. Lauren's expression softened. Maybe you were defending the person you thought you were supposed to be. I looked at her. The room suddenly felt smaller. After the divorce, everyone kept telling me to start over. Date, travel, reinvent myself. I did not want reinvention. I wanted quiet. Did you get it? Yes. And rain moved against the windows in silver lines. I thought about her empty townhouse during those 2 days she had been gone. It turns out quiet can become lonely without asking permission. Lauren lowered her eyes to her mug. I know. There was no pity in her voice. That made it easier to continue. I spent most of my adult life asking what everyone needed from me. My husband, Emily, my job. Sometimes I think I became so good at answering that question, I forgot there was another one. Lauren looked directly at me. What do you want now? My breath caught. Not because I had no answer. Because, sitting there in the warm half-light with Lauren only a few feet away, I was suddenly afraid I might. I did not answer Lauren. For several seconds, the only sound was rain against the windows and the quiet rhythm of the fireplace. She did not rescue me from the silence. I appreciated that, even while wishing she would. Eventually, I looked down at my coffee. I do not know. Lauren nodded. That is allowed. The power returned shortly after midnight. Lamps flickered on. The refrigerator hummed from the kitchen, and suddenly the warm little world we had occupied felt temporary. I folded my blanket and placed it carefully over the arm of the couch. Lauren noticed. You really do fold everything. Some of us believe civilization depends on standards. She laughed and walked me to the door. My hand reached for the knob, but I stopped. Beyond the glass, rain shimmered beneath the porch light. 20 feet away, my townhouse waited with its familiar rooms and familiar silence. Good night, Natalie, Lauren said softly. I should have opened the door. Instead, I heard myself say, my house is going to feel very quiet. Lauren became still. The sentence sounded different once it belonged to the room. More honest than I had intended. "Do you want to go?" she asked. I turned toward her. She was close enough that I could see the tiny lines beside her eyes and the uncertainty she was trying not to show. My heart began beating harder. I knew what was happening before I was willing to name it. Lauren took one small step toward me, then stopped. She left the remaining distance untouched. There was no assumption in her face. No pressure. Only a question she was allowing me to answer for myself. Every sensible thought I had seemed to arrive at once. I was 52. I had been married to a man for 26 years. Lauren was my neighbor. Lauren was my friend. Lauren was a woman. None of those facts changed. Neither did the fact that I did not move away. Her eyes searched mine. "Natalie." I closed the last few inches between us. The kiss was gentle, brief, almost careful. Yet something inside me went completely quiet. Not empty. Quiet in the way a room becomes quiet when someone has finally said the thing everyone was waiting to hear. When we separated, Lauren stayed where she was. I could feel warmth in my face and hear my own breathing. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I nodded, then realized that was not enough. Yes. It was the truth. That frightened me more than the kiss itself. Lauren did not reach for me again. She simply opened the door and said, "Good night, Natalie." I crossed the wet walkway and entered my townhouse. Everything was exactly where I had left it. The folded throw. The book on the coffee table. The rosemary beside the kitchen window. I touched my fingers lightly to my lips, then dropped my hand as if I had caught myself doing something forbidden. I went upstairs. I changed clothes. I turned off the light. Then I lay awake listening to the rain and replaying those few seconds until sunrise began turning the bedroom windows gray. I kept waiting for regret to arrive. It never did. What arrived instead was far more unsettling. I wanted to kiss her again. By 8 the next morning, I had slept for perhaps 40 minutes and developed 12 different explanations for what had happened. None survived contact with the simplest fact. I had wanted to kiss Lauren. Worse, if honesty was going to become my new hobby, I still wanted to. I made coffee and opened my laptop, but the same paragraph remained on my screen for 20 minutes. Eventually, I did what any calm, mature 52-year-old woman would do when confronted with an unexpected truth about herself. I searched the internet. I typed questions, deleted them, tried different words, then closed the browser when every answer seemed to demand a definition I was not ready to give. Straight, bisexual, lesbian, questioning. The words felt less like doors than forms someone expected me to complete correctly. I walked upstairs and opened the drawer where I kept old photographs. There was one from my wedding day. I was 23, smiling beside a man I had genuinely loved. That mattered to me. I would not turn 26 years of marriage into evidence against myself simply because something new had happened at 52. My past had been real. So was last night. Apparently, two truths could occupy the same life without asking permission. At 10:15 my phone buzzed. "Lauren, are you okay?" I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. I typed 3 replies before sending the shortest one. "I need some time." Her answer came less than a minute later. "Take it." No question mark. No demand for explanation. Somehow her kindness made everything harder. I avoided the front porch that day. Sunday coffee did not happen. On Monday, I waited until I heard Lauren's car leave before taking out the recycling. I hated myself a little for that. By Tuesday, I had become painfully aware of every sound next door. A cabinet closing. Music in the kitchen. Her footsteps on the walkway. I had asked for time, and Lauren was giving it to me exactly as promised. I discovered that distance could feel like both relief and punishment. Wednesday evening, I called Emily. We talked about her job, the rain in Seattle, and whether she should replace her ancient couch. Twice I nearly told her. Twice the words stopped somewhere behind my teeth. After we hung up, I stood beside the kitchen window and looked at the rosemary Lauren had given me. New green leaves had appeared at the tips. I almost laughed. The plant was thriving while I was hiding from the woman who had given it to me. That night, I finally asked myself a different question. Not what kind of woman kissed another woman. Not what category could explain me. Not whether one moment could rewrite everything that came before it. I asked what I actually missed. The answer arrived immediately. Lauren laughing over black coffee. Lauren remembering details I forgot I had shared. Lauren sitting beside the fireplace without trying to fix me. Lauren asking what I wanted and waiting while I struggled to answer. 3 days earlier, I had believed the kiss was the problem I needed to solve. Standing alone in my kitchen, I understood something far more frightening. I did not simply miss kissing Lauren. I missed Lauren. The next Saturday, I made 2 cups of coffee out of habit. I stood at the kitchen counter staring at them until I felt foolish. One was black. The other had the splash of cream Lauren preferred. I poured hers into the sink. At 9:30, I saw her outside carrying gardening tools toward her car. Before I could reconsider, I opened my door. Lauren. She turned. For the first time since she had moved next door. Her smile did not appear automatically. Morning. Can we talk? She glanced at the tools in her hands, then set them down. Sure. We stood beneath the shared awning while a thin Portland rain drifted beyond us. I had rehearsed this conversation twice. Every sentence disappeared. I am sorry I avoided you. Lauren nodded once. I figured you needed space. I did. I think. Did it help? Not particularly. A faint smile touched her mouth, then vanished. Natalie, what are we doing? My stomach tightened. I want things to be normal. The moment I said it, I knew it was wrong. Lauren looked toward the street. Which normal? I mean before. Before we kissed? Yes. Her eyes returned to mine. Can you do that? I opened my mouth. Nothing came. Lauren exhaled slowly. Because I cannot pretend it meant nothing. I am not saying it meant nothing. Then what are you saying? I do not know what it means. Those are different questions. Her voice remained gentle, but there was something firmer underneath it now. I understand that this is new for you. I understand that you have 52 years of assumptions colliding with one night. I am not asking you to choose a label. I am not asking you to explain your whole life. She paused. But I am part of this too. Shame warmed my face. Until that moment, I had been treating the kiss like something that happened entirely inside my own life. A mystery for me to solve. I had forgotten there was another woman standing on the other side of it. Lauren, you are not something I regret. Then please stop looking at me like I might be. The words were quiet. That made them hurt more. I stepped closer, then stopped myself. I am scared. I know. I do not want to hurt you. Then be honest with me. Even when the honest answer is messy. I looked at her. I miss you. Her expression softened, but she did not move toward me. I miss you too. Relief rose so quickly that I almost smiled. Then Lauren shook her head. But missing each other does not solve this. She picked up her gardening tools. You are allowed to be confused, Natalie. You are allowed to take time. But you do not get to make me feel like something you need to hide from, until you decide whether I fit into the life you already understand. I wanted to tell her she fit. The words frightened me because they felt too close to a promise. So I stayed silent. Lauren waited 1 second longer. Then she crossed the walkway and went inside. Her door closed softly. No argument. No dramatic goodbye. Just a click. I stood beneath the awning with rain blowing against my shoes. For 3 years I had believed silence was proof that nothing could hurt me anymore. That morning I finally understood the cost. Sometimes silence did not protect you from losing someone. Sometimes silence was how you lost them. For the next 4 days, Lauren and I became strangers who knew each other too well. I heard her leave in the morning. I saw the porch light come on at night. Once we reached our mailboxes at the same time and exchanged a polite hello that hurt more than an argument would have. By Wednesday evening, I could no longer pretend confusion was the same thing as reflection. I called Emily. Can I ask you something strange? You raised me. My standards for strange are flexible. I smiled despite myself. Did you ever realize something about yourself later than you thought you should? There was a pause. Later than who? What? Who decides when you are supposed to understand everything about yourself? I sat down at the kitchen table. I suppose I thought I would know by 52. Mom, you changed careers at 41. You learned to kayak at 46. You discovered you liked Thai food after telling me for 15 years that you hated it. That last example feels unnecessarily aggressive. Emily laughed. Then her voice softened. You do not have to tell me what this is about, but maybe stop treating your age like a deadline. After we hung up, I remained at the table while rain traced the window. For weeks, I had been asking what kissing Lauren meant about the woman I had always been. Suddenly, the question seemed backward. My marriage had been real. My love for Emily's father had been real. None of that required defending. Lauren did not erase my past. She was asking me to be honest about my present. And the truth was embarrassingly simple. I wanted Saturday coffee. I wanted her laugh through the wall. I wanted her opinion about my rosemary. I wanted to know when she had a difficult day. I wanted to be the person she told. I wanted Lauren. The realization did not answer every question about me. It answered the one that mattered. The next morning, I finally walked toward her door. Before I reached it, Lauren stepped outside carrying a cardboard box. Another sat behind her. Are you moving? The question came out too quickly. She looked surprised. Not exactly. Then what are those? Work samples. She hesitated. I accepted a 6-month project in Northern California. The world seemed to narrow around those words. When? I leave next Friday. You were going to tell me? I was. Her expression remained calm, but sadness moved behind it. Before everything got complicated. Did you take it because of me? No, the answer was immediate. I interviewed for it before the storm. They made the offer Monday. This is something I have wanted professionally for years. I nodded because I understood what she was telling me. Lauren had a life that did not begin when I noticed her. She had plans that did not exist to test my courage. Congratulations, I said, and meant it even as my chest tightened. Thank you. She carried the box toward her car. I stood between our 2 townhouses, staring at the 20 feet of wet pavement that had once seemed like no distance at all. Lauren was leaving in 8 days. For the first time, there was an actual clock running, and I could not edit my way around it. I had spent weeks waiting to understand myself perfectly before taking another step. Now I understood something simpler. Perfect clarity might never come, but Lauren could leave while I was still waiting for it. And if I let that happen without telling her the truth, confusion would no longer be the reason. Fear would. I waited until Saturday morning because fear is remarkably skilled at disguising itself as preparation. By then, boxes were stacked inside Lauren's living room, and every glimpse through her window reminded me that next Friday was coming whether I was ready or not. I made 2 cups of coffee, black for me, cream for her. Then I crossed the 20 feet between our doors and knocked. Lauren opened wearing an old gray sweater, her dark blonde hair loosely tied back. Surprise crossed her face when she saw the cups. Peace offering? She asked. Possibly. I am still editing the description. She almost smiled. Come in. I stepped inside the same room where the lights had gone out weeks earlier. This time I could see everything clearly. I spent weeks trying to figure out what kissing you said about me. I began. Lauren became very still. I thought if I found the correct word, everything else would become simple. Did you find it? No, I took a breath. But I realized I was using that question to avoid one I already knew how to answer. She waited. Which one? Whether I want you in my life. My voice shook, but I kept going. I do. I miss you when you are 20 feet away. I care whether you had a good day. I buy cookies because you like them. I have somehow kept Rosemary alive because disappointing you seemed unacceptable. Lauren laughed softly, and my eyes burned with unexpected tears. I do not know what label fits me yet. Maybe someday I will. But I know you are not a mistake, Lauren. You are not something I regret. I was scared because wanting you felt like discovering a room inside myself I never knew existed. Her expression softened. Natalie, I am still going to California. I know. 6 months is a long time. Then we will have 6 months of inconvenient phone calls, expensive plane tickets, and me criticizing your punctuation by video chat. That sounds terrible. I am trying to be romantic. You need another draft. I laughed, then stepped closer. Here is the shorter version. I want us to try. Lauren looked at me for a long moment. So do I. This time when I kissed her, I did not spend the next morning searching for an explanation. 6 months later, another moving truck stopped outside our townhouses. I stood on my porch holding 2 coffees while Lauren climbed out of her car behind it. She looked at me, then at the cups. "Were you waiting for me?" "Maybe. You are terrible at pretending." I smiled. "I am getting better at not trying." She crossed the walkway and I met her halfway. My life had not become simpler. It had become larger. Emily knew about Lauren and had responded by asking when she could meet the woman responsible for keeping my Rosemary alive. I still did not have every answer about myself. I no longer believed I needed them. For most of my life, I thought knowing yourself meant being certain. Now I think it means recognizing the truth when your own heart finally speaks clearly enough to hear it. Thank you for spending this time with our story. If it stayed with you, please subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who may need a reminder that discovering something new about yourself is never arriving too late.